this event, and we'll be sending out the recording after. Okay. So welcome. We're very excited to have all of you here with us today. We will be sharing this event, the recording of it, on the GIS YouTube channel, but we will also be emailing it out to all of you in case you want to share it with your friends or colleagues. And the format of today's event is going to be guided by the hosts. I'm one of them, along with my esteemed colleague, Miss Carly Fitzgerald. I'm Sheila Steinberg. Our featured speaker today is Miss Whitney Kotlewski, and we have allocated time at the end for question and answers, as well as provided our contact information as well as her contact information should you want to continue the conversation further. Carly Fitzgerald, my co-host, is a GIS professional from Florida, and she serves on the board of directors for Women in GIS as the Professional Development Committee lead.
Hi, everyone. Dr. Sheila Steinberg, who was just speaking with you, is the faculty president, chair of the GIS committee, and professor of GIS and social and environmental science at Brandman University.
Great. So today we're going to be, here's an outline for today's events. We'll be talking about some Women in GIS upcoming events because we're always busy doing something. We'll introduce our speaker. She will be talking about the Black Girls M.A.P.P projects, which are so interesting. We'll have a guided discussion followed by questions and answers.
So what is Women in GIS? We are an international professional and social advocacy group of women and other allies that have banded together to support and encourage each other. Our aim is to help women start and navigate their geospatial careers. We like to serve as a safe place for women from all different types of geospatial fields to work together to overcome things such as job discrimination, lower pay, professional isolation, and other common barriers that women might face. We have two upcoming events that I'd like to briefly go over. The first one coming up is our March 29th event with Dr. Maria Fadiman. She is a professor from Florida Atlantic University. She is an ethnobotanist and a geographer. She is an excellent storyteller. She is a two-time TEDx speaker and a National Geographic explorer. And she is going to be talking about how GIS and ethnobotany work together and how GIS can help further GIS, how GIS can further work in ethnobotany. Our second talk that I'd like to mention is Finding Your Authentic Voice for GIS Data and Life, which is going to be with our featured speaker, Helen Thompson. This webinar is Tuesday, April 27th. All of these webinars are free and they are co-hosted with Brandman University and Women in GIS. If you would like to register for these, the links for them you can find on womeningis.org in our event calendar. With that, we're going to get into our featured speaker today.
Great. Thank you, Carly. So I'm going to read a little bit about Whitney so we can know how great she is. Whitney is leading design operations at Esri, working at the corporate headquarters in Redlands, California. Her core responsibilities are to support high-profile products for mobile, desktop, and web applications, with designs that embrace UX principles, user research, and design system consistency. Whitney's most influential work at Esri has been her contributions to Esri's data visualization application, Insights for ArcGIS, where she led the UX design of the product's V1 interface. Today, Whitney has impacted various new projects at Esri, where she has led redesigns for field mobile applications, developer platforms, and UI oversight over drone to map interfaces. Not only is she a hands-on design lead at Esri, but is currently pursuing her PhD at Claremont Graduate University, where she hopes to advance her personal research centered around empowering various members of her local community, specifically underrepresented and lower socioeconomic groups, by the avenue of advanced technology. Whitney is the visionary and co-founder of Black Girls M.A.P.P, a community-focused group to empower women of color and marginalized groups in the field of GIS. Her vision through this initiative is to inspire a network of people using GIS to solve community problems. She is recently the co-award recipient of the 2021 American Association of Geographers Diversity and Inclusion Award, where she led 150 plus volunteers in building GIS-based election information products to empower people to vote. So without further ado, we are going to have our wonderful guest speaker, Whitney, take it away.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Sheila. Appreciate it. Let me go ahead and share my screen. All right. You guys don't need to look at the Zoom call. So yes, thank you so much for the bio read. I'm happy to be able to present Black Girls M.A.P.P. and the work that we've been able to do. It seems like just yesterday that Raina, the other co-founder, and myself were sitting down trying to figure out ways to make an impact, specifically even at our company, as we recognize, for several years, seeing this lack of representation of specifically African-American women in the field of GIS. I actually don't come from a background of GIS whatsoever, but even just being at conferences and just talking with people, that there really wasn't that presence. And so we wanted to do something about it. So we said, let's find out where we're at. Our first task was actually to map Black women on a map. Let me jump to that project. Sorry. My screen's a little delayed right now.
No worries.
It was working earlier. So our first project was really trying to identify which Black women were actually in GIS. And so we built an application that was able to highlight not only the Black women by state, but also provide individual profiles of the women in the field. The application that we ended up using was actually a web app and a web map. And I'm gonna actually just switch to another screen, as I can see Story Maps isn't liking what I'm doing right now. Let's see if this actually
Story
loads.
Maps knows it's almost the weekend.
There we go. It's loading now. We were able to identify about 300 plus Black women in GIS. They're now all mapped on the map. We actually were inspired by this from the Women in GIS map. So this is definitely something that was an iteration. And so thank you all for kind of setting precedent. But one interesting thing I want to talk about with this exploration of us identifying Black women in the field of GIS was simply that we were able to also talk with one of the contributors of the Women GIS map. When I was at the last, a few years ago, there was a user conference in San Diego before COVID. And there's a woman that actually was the founder of the map that you guys are actually portraying, and she happens to be an African-American woman. And so she came up to me and was like, I hope that I'm gonna get on this Black Girls map. And I said, no, you're on that map. What we were able to do was identify not only the women, but also linking to their LinkedIn information to start to try to create a network. This year, we're going to be building out that network so that we can actually add support systems for women in the field. Jumping back to other projects. Let's see now if the story map will load for me. Looks like it is now. We've also done a lot of work with Black businesses. We currently have a team that's actually revamping our Black businesses app, which will basically be able to where Black businesses are across the nation, as well as specifically in California. Hopefully this loads now, as I'm seeing this is gonna be, looks like it wants to be an issue. Let's kick it out. Oh, we'll give it a moment.
Sounds good.
Yeah. So we piloted an application using Web App Builder, and now today it's actually a living and breathing thing that we're able to contribute across the nation to. Right now we have 966 Black-owned businesses that have been located specifically in California. We've opened this recently up now to the nation. And so we're hoping, as you guys saw this past summer, with the recent events of George Floyd, and also just more insight as to how we can further uplift the Black community, We're seeing now that people want to take part in trying to empower the Black community, specifically even in the entrepreneurial sector. And so what we're doing right now is really setting precedent to be able to collect data that wasn't really being able to be found before. And hopefully we can do some more insightful things with this, being able to maybe do some predictive analysis as to future businesses that should be placed in areas that can support Black-owned entrepreneurs. And so we're really excited about this work. I want to say thank you to Laura, a part of our team, Laura Basawa, who's a part of Black Girls M.A.P.P. and who led this effort in redesigning this business app for us. And then lastly, I'm going to jump to another app, as I see that the story maps might be down today. It's People for the People. So I talked about us wanting to at least tackle community problems through Black Girls M.A.P.P., but it really came to light this past year for the 2020 election, where we recognized with the catalyst events of health disparities, racial tension, as well as political tension, that we wanted to come together on a unified front using Esri's technology and putting that at the forefront of bringing us together. So we put out a call to action. 150 plus people answered that call. And it was an amazing experience to be able to lead it. Not only were we able to obviously put together a pretty clean environment that houses all of this political information to help people become civic minded going into the election, but we're also able to be innovative. We created applications that, as you know, in GIS, we haven't seen before. A lot of these efforts were woman-led. And one of the cool things too about this is our ability to be able to add our personality, as well as highlighting some of the things that we hope can be better in the future, like the representation of women and people of color candidates running in the next year's elections. Lastly, we've also provided a toolkit. This toolkit is really allowing for us to let further GISers be able to build off of the work that we've done. We're using ArcGIS Hub, thanks to that team for supporting us in this effort, so that we can provide all the maps and data that we use to create applications on the site. I did want to show one particular application that's around sentiment mapping. This is innovative. For anyone who's into sentiment mapping or sentiment analysis, you would know that it's becoming new. The way in which we actually do this is in a different way. Let me see if I can also pop this out as I see my computer's running kind of slow. So what you're going to see is a word cloud on the left and a map on the right. Those things talk together. And what happens is community members actually come to this application providing their feelings and sentiments on a given social issue. And so what we were hoping for when we built this out was that communities could have a sense of belonging and also a place to just voice their concerns and their feelings towards things that are sensitive topics. As you can see in this particular map, that as we start to explore different sentiments that have been provided, that we get context, as well as the race distribution of that area. If I keep exploring, I might start to find similar sentiments, where not only is someone in California feeling exhausted and providing their reasons for why, but also someone in Georgia as well as someone in Virginia. And so in a time when we needed to feel unified so much, we were able to bring us together even virtually. This is actually being showcased as a part of City of Chicago's virtual summit, where they were able to ask several different Chicagoans what their vision was for racial healing. And so 613 people actually applied to this using our sentiment app. This is now being showcased as an Esri solution. And so with that, I'm going to top it off with you guys being able to ask some questions. I know I could keep going on and on about the work of Black Girls M.A.P.P. and our People for the People initiative, but Sheila, Carly, go ahead.
So it looks like that was very interesting, and it looks like it caused some questions to emerge, which I think is great. So we have a question in here from Surashka, who says, I love this initiative. How were you able to identify Black-owned businesses?
Yeah, so It wasn't easy, I can say that. And with many of the work, much of the work that we do, we found that when we ask a question, specifically like, where are all the Black-owned businesses, or where are all the Black women in GIS? There's no data set for that. No one was tracking those things. And so what you find when you're doing community impact work is a lot of this data needs to be collected. And that's one thing that we pride ourselves on, is we're building platforms for people to crowdsource information so that they can actually be able to do things with it to impact communities. And so what we did was we actually went through, we found Black-owned businesses directories. And we were searching through basically that and Google, and trying basically to identify businesses manually. So this was a manual effort. Along with other efforts that we've done. You know, if we can't find the data, then we have to start collecting the data. And so that's really what we did. And so now what happens is, in that application that I showed with Laura leading that, we've done a great job now of being able to do checks and balances. So like, especially after COVID, we're going to be able to do, we have it in our system now that it's really easy to be able to identify when businesses have basically fallen out. Because of, you know, COVID or whatever the case may be. And so now we can actually update that system. That was a pain point too that we saw with other directories that were housing just flat information about Black-owned businesses, was that it gets dated and then it's not really useful. And so one of the things about using GIS and the way that we're using our application is that we can actually identify those businesses and also be able to label them as not necessarily being in business anymore. Another thing too is contributions. We can't do this on our own, but what we recognize is by crowdsourcing that, we really are able to add to that information, getting more people involved from various states and different backgrounds. So, yeah.
That was really interesting. And the sentiment mapping that you created, that was, I want to go back and look at that after the event just so I can explore it, because that was really interesting. I know that we have a couple more slides where we'd like to learn some more about you, Whitney,
Yeah.
and we'll come back to the questions at the end
Okay.
from the audience. So without further ado, I believe, Sheila, I'm going to hand this over to you.
Sure, no problem. There's one more comment here. I'm just going to read because it's just a comment that is positive. I love the use of GIS to map sentiments, which to me shows the power of combining so-called hard sciences with soft sciences. Most people assume, myself included, that they are mutually exclusive. Thank you for changing my perspective on that. So you're already getting some appreciation. And Lori says, can you provide the link to the sentiment map? So perhaps if you could put that in the chat, that would be great. So our first question for you is, how did you get started in GIS?
Wow.
And you can give us the backstory too, because I think it's good for people to know. You don't have to be all, you know, have that as your career goal. You might just end up there.
Yes, I would like to say that GIS and I have an interesting relationship. It found me. I played basketball. I was a musician. I actually am a Hall of Famer for my alma mater for basketball. I did music almost semi-professionally at one point in my life. I'm a designer, so I wear a design hat. I'm in the creative side of the house at Esri. But I think it was in meetings with product teams as I was trying to help them come up with user experiences and solving problems that were design-related problems, that I recognized, one, the power of GIS, and also my lack of knowledge of GIS. You know, I'm doing an injustice to the users when we're designing experiences if I don't understand what their problems are, what their shared sentiments are, and also what are their goals in the applications. And so I think for me, my own personal goal was to overcome that, to be a domain expert in my own right. Not only to be able to help me in my design field, but also for me to give that to our users, and also to be able to better support our product teams. I'm one of the technical designers. You know, they call me now in the room, and I can speak the language, and I've probably built a few different applications. And I'm happy to have that on as a check mark on my sleeve. In addition to that, I think I've also been pursuing academics in GIS, seeing that not only is there power, but the education, enabling communities, especially untapped communities, knowing that power and being able to have access to GIS is really important to me. I think about even when I was growing up, you know, no one was asking me anything about my career in GIS. I didn't even know that this was a field, you know. And so I think about all the young women who look like me, who could have that opportunity now today. And to be able to see someone doing it is different than just thinking you can do it. And I want to be that representation. And so I'm happy that GIS found me.
That's great. So this leads to the next question, which you somewhat alluded to. What is the connection between GIS and community impact?
Yeah, I think that word impact is the connection. The impact can be different things though, right? So in one instance, it could be the fact that we're just trying to identify something, like where are there Black-owned businesses? So we can support them, so we can empower them. That impact could also be something like the health disparities and COVID's impact on the Black community. Identifying not only that there's health issues, but that there's other systematic issues like lack of green spaces in high populated Black areas, high air pollution in highly populated Black areas. And so, you know, when I think about the connection for me and some of the things that we've tried to lead is looking at the impact. What is the impact on the people? When we look at the People for the People initiative, the election initiative, that was just that. It wasn't so much about red versus blue, right? Anything else in between. It was more about who's being impacted and where do you stand? Mm-hmm. Who are you thinking about when you go to vote? Mm-hmm. And what impact will that make? So yeah.
Okay, that's great. And yeah, we know that GIS brings the people and the resources together. And what do they say? A picture's worth 1,000 words. When you could see it, you visualize it, you could do it, right? So next question is, we know that women face challenges in the field for sure. What kind of challenges do you face? And maybe you could tell us a little bit about how you've overcome them. GIS for many years has been traditionally male dominated. Women are making their mark for sure, but historically it's been pretty male dominated until recently.
Yeah. I would say this, and I'll position it this way. Sorry. Is that I'm wearing two hats. You know, I have a hat of a design lead and a designer, as well as a GIS professional and a GIS leader. And those worlds actually interconnect when we get down to diversity, equity, and inclusion. The design world is actually, as much as it's creative, is not as diverse. I'm one of very few African-American leads in marketing. Let alone I'm the only Black manager in my own entire creative lab. And so you can see that there's barriers and boundaries being broken even today in just that space. And then you talk about the GIS world, which you said is predominantly male, predominantly white male. And it's interesting because that is why we called this initiative Black Girls M.A.P.P. It's because when we, and I want to kind of circle back on that map part. M-A-P-P, yes, we do know how to spell. But that extra P is because MAP for us means mapping with action to pioneer progress. We wanted to make sure that we weren't just talking about Black issues or talking about social issues. We wanted to actually do something and have action. And so for me, that is exactly the way that as a leader, I'm kind of facing challenges, is that I'm not just saying, you know, I think that I should do this or that I have the ability to do something. I'm proving it to people. I'm showing them. One of the biggest things that I can say about the challenges that I face, aside from diversity, is just trying to rise to the occasion, trying to be great and trying to really just fulfill all the desires that I have. You know, it's one thing to say you can do things, but it's another to be able to actually just put your money where your mouth is, and trying to execute, right? Another thing too, I think of the challenges is I've been brought up not to just do these things for myself. My measure of success is actually of those around me. And so I think one of the biggest challenges is trying to figure out how to bring up others with me. That's a lot of work. That's a lot of heavy lifting. But for me, that's my measure of success. And so in the spaces of design, I'm trying to do that. In the spaces of GIS, I'm trying to do that. And those are important challenges. I would even say that our People for the People initiative in itself was a challenge. Just trying to get acceptance about something that's saying, let's unify, let's remove the lines, and let's just talk about people, and still getting friction, still getting hesitancy. And I think the biggest thing is that when you start talking about diversity and inclusion and equitable practices, some people do get nervous and they get scared because of change. And that's a natural reaction. I don't fault people for being uncomfortable about change. Who doesn't want to be comfortable? you know? But what it is that it's a transformation is the way that I like to think about change. This type of change isn't to hurt people. It isn't to make people less than, or to now put new people in power and to bring down other people. The way that I look at the obstacles that I've overcome is really trying to figure out how to transform our way in which we were doing things so that we can be better. We all know that having multiple backgrounds and diverse thinking is really the way to really solve a problem. You do that true checks and balances. And so for me, that's really the biggest thing in the strives. But how I focus on really challenging things is basically just understanding that I have a purpose. And I have to stay true to that purpose, no matter if it's in basketball, no matter if it was in my music life, no matter if it's with my family, no matter if it's at Esri doing GIS and design, is that I have to stay true to my purpose, which is really to serve others, to elevate others. So
That's great. That's really wonderful. Love to hear that. Your approach is so important, and I like how you weave that throughout your whole life. You're not just saying like, "Oh, I do this in my work." It's like, no, that's a core value of who you are, right?
Yeah.
And so important. So, here's a question for you. How can GIS be used to empower women?
Great question. I think the way that Black Girls M.A.P.P. has done it is a good template. But I would say this is that specifically in the field of GIS, there's many opportunities, I think, for leaders to step up and to identify solutions and gaps in the process. Sometimes that's actually in building things, innovative works. And sometimes it's in our processes and our research, our data collection. And in some instances, it's actually in just telling stories and housing stories and being able to help other people tell their stories. And so, when I think about GIS and why, like I said, I didn't have a background, but I definitely sipped the Kool-Aid for this, is that I see how powerful and how flexible GIS is. And I've seen literally, even in not only in my own life, the transformation that it can enable people to have once they get tapped in. The community feeling that you get too. I've never seen such a broad community of people that are really just trying to solve problems. That's really what it comes down to.
Mm-hmm.
I don't even hear people, I'm sure all of us want to make money too, but I don't really hear that as much as wanting to solve problems, wanting to fix things, wanting to make things better, not wanting to forget the past so that we don't repeat it. And so for women, I think this is really the time for women to step up in this field and be able to be elevated and also to be acknowledged. There's a lot of women that are doing amazing things already in GIS. I just think that at this point in time, the tide needs to change, that we elevate them more and we acknowledge them for their work. But one thing I can say, if anything, is what I said before, is that there's young women today looking at a lot of these women that are setting precedent in the field, and now they can see that they can do it. Like when I got to Esri, like I said, I didn't know anything about GIS, but I saw Dawn Wright. And I say, wow, she's our chief scientist. In spite of her just being a chief scientist who's African-American woman, she's also the chief scientist of a global GIS company. And that did something for me. That's all I needed. That's all I needed. Because now I know that my trajectory for excellence in my career will be at the top. I know that there's more for me to do because I saw that. When I think of other personnel like Paulette Brown Hines, who's a really good colleague with Jack Dangerman, she's doing amazing work with her Voice Media News company that's really spanning across Riverside and San Bernardino County. And she is able to really give me mentoring and how you do community grassroots work. Black Girls M.A.P.P. was really inspired by Mapping Black California, which was an initiative that Esri and Paulette's group was doing. I was so inspired by seeing her in this element, looking at lost history, looking at past history and trying to educate us not to forget it and also not to repeat it, that I wanted to do something like Black Girls M.A.P.P. And so, you know, for women that are listening in, remember that we have to give it back. That remember that everything we do that's going forward, someone's following in our footsteps. And that we should embrace that moment, that we're trailblazers in our own right.
This is true. Thank you so much. So it's such excellent answers. I'm going to turn it over now to my colleague, Carly, to continue.
Thank you.
Whitney, it has been very inspirational listening to you so far. We've talked about empowering women and challenges that women face, or we face in the GIS field. This next question is more specifically about being a leader in this field. Given that you are a leader in design, what challenges do you face? And again, how do you overcome them?
Oof, how do I do this? So there's a lot of challenges. I think in any working situation, there's challenges. I think for me though, the biggest thing is getting a seat at the table. You know, I think that was the biggest thing. And you know, I can set the stage for you. So I'm coming into this very GIS-centric world, which is already predominantly white male. I'm asked as designer to take subject matter experts' information and craft desirable and attractive experiences that meet those needs. When I go to sit at that table, I am one of very few women, if not, I'm only one, but I'm also literally the only African American. And I'm supposed to be the designer that's supposed to lead the effort. And that right there is always been a challenge. And so it wasn't until about, you know, this was earlier on in my career at Esri, but something switched for me. And I think that the biggest thing that I realized as I was starting to lead efforts and mentor more team members is I realized I have to get this under control for myself. What it comes down to is the confidence. You know, not many people can say when they walk into a room with people that don't look like them that their confidence is elevated, that they get bigger. Usually most people, when they walk into a room of feeling a little bit different, that your confidence goes down. And so I recognized that I had to control my confidence. So then it goes back to what makes me confident. And the thing that makes me confident is my purpose and my identity of who I am, how I was raised, and what I think of myself and my abilities. That's my full self. And I recognize in these spaces where I didn't feel like I could bring my full self was when my confidence would get reduced. And so for me, really how you overcome challenges, especially like for me with the diversity aspects of things, was recognizing that I have to bring my full self to the table. If I don't bring full Whitney Kotlewski to the table, then I'm gonna miss out on an opportunity for confidence in that space. And let me tell you something, when I have a lot of confidence, as most of us, I can do some amazing things because I'm not worried about what people think. I'm not worried about if I fail. I'm not worried about if I get it wrong or what is going to be the end result. All I'm worried about is getting the job done and doing it right and even being creative and innovative because I don't have the energy spent on those things. But when someone comes into a room and they're not confident, they're thinking about all those other things. Their energy is not spent on the task at hand, and then they underperform. They don't have a voice. They're timid, or they get removed from the table at that point. And so, you know, my biggest thing is having confidence, recognizing that I have to bring my full self. As a leader now in design, I pull my team members to try to have that confidence by letting them know I'm embracing your full self. Bring all of you to the table. I want you confident. And let's match that to some passion as well so we can really make some impact.
I love that. Confidence and passion, and what you've spoken to about how representation matters and being that woman in the room sitting at the table, and how important that is for everybody to see. I love that. I'm going to bring us to the next question, where we talk about community empowerment and GIS. So what is the connection between community empowerment and GIS, in your opinion?
Yeah. The first thing that I think about is there's well, two things that I think about is the fact that most communities don't know about GIS.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, let's face it, even in GIS organizations, most employees don't even know how to use the tools and what they can use them for. Unless you're building something, you really know how to use it. There's a learning curve to learn how to use certain applications and what their purpose is for, what's the appropriate tool for analysis. I mean, I can go on and on about it. And so, you know, that's a hurdle in itself. But the other thing too is the questions that you ask, right? In order to do something in GIS, you have to be able to understand the problem space and be able to know which questions, because that's going to let you know how you're going to be able to solve that problem, or at least bring awareness to it. Which application to use, which tool to use, right? Which visualization, how to visualize the data. And so, you know, I think the connection for me, or at least the gap and the thing that we've been trying to have opportunity upon, is trying to alleviate not knowing which question to ask by simply just talking about the feeling itself. Okay, there's a lot of shootings going on and a lot of Black men are being killed at the hands of law enforcement. We know that that's a problem. We've seen time and time again. How is the community feeling about this? And let's start there. You know, let's start with the feelings, and then let's start working towards the solutions. Because when you start trying to point fingers and start to say well, it's because of this or it's because of that, we spend energy on those things, on the two sides of the argument. But one thing we cannot deny is the feeling. That's a true feeling when a community feels broken, when they feel like they have no other option, that they've been, you know, beaten or battered or pressed in this particular situation. Time and time again, we can all agree that that's a shared sentiment. And that's why, you know, what happened with George Floyd, you see it. You saw a shared sentiment across the nation and even globally, that no one was arguing about the cause or why it's happening. Or, you know, yeah, there's a lot of research questions you could pull from that. What people agreed upon was the feeling of seeing someone in this situation when they shouldn't have been in it. Not seeing them like that is what we're trying to aim to do, is to say, let's pull up these feelings. Let's start mapping these feelings and these sentiments. And then now let's start asking questions of how we solve the problem. Let's work together though, and understand that all of us have different feelings and opinions, but we can still come up with a solution to alleviate that feeling, to alleviate these sentiments. And so, yeah, that's at least how I see it. And I definitely, I'm shining light on our word cloud sentiment app, because I feel like it really does house how communities can be empowered so that they can take this information and be able to boil that back out to their representatives and say, look, this is how we're feeling. We don't need a survey that shows you statistical data. We can show you these words and you can see that that's going to resonate with you, because you can even connect with that.
I'm already thinking, I have the gears going in my head. Boy, how would I implement that with the work that I do? So it's really, really inspiring to listen and hear about. We have two more questions before we get to the Q&A part, and I know we want to leave some time for Q&A. So I'm going to jump up to the next one. What are you working on right now that you're really excited about?
Yes, so exciting things for Black Girls M.A.P.P. and People for the People. We partnered with Sofia Garcia. She was originally with the Dolores Huerta Foundation, and now she's with Redistricting Partners as a director.
We know her well.
Okay, so nods and nods. Awesome. Yeah, so Sophia is working with our People for the People team, and we're working on a redistricting and gerrymandering project. Not only will we be talking and breaking down the issues with districting methods and, you know, good redistricts versus bad ones, but also highlighting a new application that allows for community members to draw their own lines and be able to see, you know, how diverse was I when I drew this line? And how compact was my line? So compactness is saying, was it equally distributed, or was it like manipulated? And so one of the biggest things with redistricting is that when districts are equally distributed and that they're basically done with the right intentions, everyone in the community can benefit, not just some. And so we want to have a conversation about that and hopefully encourage community members to get involved with their state legislators to basically, create more avenues for better resources to their communities.
That sounds like it's going to be really useful and a fun project to work on. I know Sheila mentioned that we know Sophia Garcia. A year ago, last March, when we had our very first Women in GIS webinar series with Brandman University, she was our first guest speaker, and it was an absolute pleasure to work with her. And I can include that in the post email that I send out, maybe a link to that webinar if anybody would like to see the work that she does as well.
Yes, I believe her and I will be speaking at the UC as a breakout session about the work. So stay tuned as it's coming out. I think in March sometime, the team I think will be ready to release this work, but exciting that I got a chance finally to partner with her with the Black Girls M.A.P.P and People for the People work.
Very exciting. And the last question before we get to everybody else's questions in the Q&A, what is your last biggest piece of advice that you would give the women that are listening today?
And it's funny, this question's been asked. I was speaking at a university, Concordia University 2 weeks ago, and a young woman from the Black Student Alliance asked me similar question. And I'll repeat what I said to her, which is simply that there comes a time where, especially as women leaders, we need to be comfortable with occupying spaces that are presented to us. So many times, if you're lucky, you can get a seat at the table. But even if you're in the doorway or even in the hallway, you can still occupy that space, own that space, bring 200%, and realize that as you're in that space, you're creating, you're innovating, and you're also recognizing things about yourself that will help you be able to excel. And so what I like to tell women who are listening today is go back to your spaces and make sure you're fully occupying them. Do the best of your ability and recognize that you're great. Own that, accept that, and think nothing less. Do not settle for anything less. Know that you're going to accomplish amazing things today and tomorrow, and just keep doing the work. And last thing is just remember that when you're doing that work, to pay it back, to give it back. We can't get there unless we all work together. And so that's all I have for you all today. Thank you.
That's perfect. And we're planning a future talk where we might have a conversation about imposter syndrome. And just hearing you talk, I almost feel like I want to bring you in again so that you can
we'll do it.
I was the queen of imposter syndrome back in the day. And actually this occupying your space is really important, because what I found with imposter syndrome, at least from my perspective, is like recognizing that I had all these really great ideas and I knew inside that I could do these things, but I just wouldn't do it. Like I wouldn't take that step to just do it. And so that occupying that space means own that territory. This is yours. Make it yours. And so once that clicked, I was like, okay, when I put my mind to something, it's mine.
Thank you. Yeah, incredibly inspiring. I really appreciate this. And this is our opportunity now. We are going to break at about probably 55 minutes after the hour. So we have about 10 minutes left where we can do some Q&A from the audience. If you have a question, you can unmute your mic and join, or if you would like to type it in the chat, we'll ask Whitney for you. I know I had a question earlier. I'll kind of get it going for us. What we can do to help out the Black-owned business application and maybe get the word out, help you get more businesses on the application. How can we help out with that?
I would think it would be amazing if I think it's like over 6,000 women in GIS helped us map Black-owned businesses in their regions. That would be insanely helpful. As I know that there's nonprofits and other local government initiatives that would love to leverage this data. And so it would be awesome if we could get that help. We can provide you guys with the link, and all you have to do is go right into the app, and it's a crowdsource app. So you get a survey and you fill that out, add the location of the business, and that's it.
Mhm.
It's on the map. And so, yeah, if we could help get that contribution, that would be amazing to build that out. We actually are going to be doing an announcement about the app as it's now finally complete and in its right form. And so we would be happy for you guys to be one of the first ones that gets access to that and can help contribute to it.
We would love that, definitely. And I know we asked for the link in the chat for the sentiment map, if you have just a moment while I gather some more questions.
For you.
And maybe that Black-owned business and the People for the People, somewhere where you can go to access all of that information.
Okay. I'm posting right now. I don't know if the link, it doesn't look like the link worked. Let me give you a short link. Sorry.
Yeah,
Don't
I see
click.
a long link. Yeah.
Let me give you the short link.
Which,
Okay.
the long one opens too.
Here's the short link, but I also can shoot you guys if anybody wants to just take a look at that virtual summit one. This was a revision of our work where Esri Solutions team, I believe, worked with the city of Chicago to put up a version of our application up there. And so it was really cool just to see how a vision actually became reality, where we said we wanted to do these things, and then seeing it on one of our customer sites is just really rewarding. And I think as a leader, it was really cool to see my team get to see their work. You know, I think there's something beautiful about that as a leader to say, see, I promised you guys, your work mattered. And then it's like, see, your work mattered.
That's true.
And so, yeah, it's been very rewarding.
That's great. So we have some comments in the chat. So this is from Janine Mesa. She says, this is so powerful and impactful. As a social worker, I love the sentiment mapping and appreciate you sharing your own professional journey. Also, shout out to Redlands. I'm in Loma Linda.
Woohoo, there you go. Yeah.
So, yeah. So
and
there you
Ashley
go.
York had a comment as well. This has been really amazing. And Lori Williams really enjoyed everything about this presentation.
Awesome.
And from Tyro, wow, amazing words. The audience and everybody listening seems to really love your inspiring presentation, Whitney. We really appreciate it.
Well, thank you so much. And I must shout out the other co-founder, Raina Kamau. I think it's been an amazing experience as two African, well, Raina's actually from Kenya, so she's of African descent. But for two Black women to be together in a unified front and be able to do the work that we've done thus far, it's just been amazing and also a very enlightening experience for me to have that partnership and that collaboration. So thank you, Raina, for when she's listening in.
When she listens to the recording.
Yeah. She's actually working on some our racial equity team, and so she had a huge meeting right now, and I'm like, yes, go take care of it.
Yeah, that's good. You guys can cover each other's back. So so somebody just posted it would be beneficial to get GIS students involved in the Black-owned business identification.
Yeah, this is something that we are hoping to do as well with that release. I'm actually going to put the Black-owned businesses app as well in the chat for you guys.
Okay.
As we do have it. We just haven't done a formal release announcement about it, which will be coming out soon. And let me put that in the chat too. There is another project too that I failed to mention. Amanda Gorman from the inauguration, if you remember her poem. Rain and I are going to be partnering with, hoping to partner with Concordia University in Texas with a few faculty and students to be able to story map out that poem, looking at past, present, and future. And what we're hoping to do with that is actually, aside from get more people involved into GIS and storytelling, right? Is to be able to have that be a tool that teachers could use when they want to break down the poem. They have visual representation and data, historical data about the context as to what she meant in that poem. And I think it would be really cool as an introduction, light introduction to GIS is by taking something so recent and so impactful to all of us.
And everybody seems to love that as well. We're saying that's amazing, fantastic, so cool.
Comments, yeah.
Yeah, that is really, and her poem was just amazing. So that's really great that you're going to be working with her for that. And another comment that is amazing regarding Gorman's poem is that for National Poetry Month in April.
We wish we could get it done that soon. We're hoping that this could even be out in the summertime, as we have a lot of contributors. And so
Right.
with that, we understand about
Mhm.
time. And
Yeah.
but what will happen is this will set precedent for next year's Poetry Month.
Yeah.
So we'll be able to showcase it then. But yeah, the heavy lifting will happen this year. And we're excited just to explore this, because I think we've all seen nationally that words matter.
Hmm.
And why
Yes.
not, even in the field of GIS, elevate words?
Right.
Well, I think unless we have any more questions come in, I have one last thing that I was going to mention. I know I mentioned the upcoming events that Women in GIS have. I'd like to tie that into what Whitney said earlier with representation matters, and seeing when she saw Dawn Wright working for Esri as the chief scientist and how much that meant to her. I know Sheila and I have been working for the last year really hard on our Women in GIS webinar series, because we want to put women out there and share their stories and what they've gone through, how they built their career. And it's part of our professional development work. So I just wanted to plug that out there, because even Whitney just mentioned that representation matters and how important it was to see somebody similar in a position that she highly respected. So womeningis.org is our website. Brandman University is helping us host those webinars. And the very last thing, Whitney, is if somebody would like to get a hold of you and communicate with you, what is the best way for them to do that?
Yes. So I am on LinkedIn, but I will provide with you guys a few things. If you go to bgmap.com, you will be able to contact both myself and Raina. But like I said, I'm on LinkedIn. I'm trying to remember my Twitter handle is, I think, UXSKI. And yeah, and my email address, I can provide that as well to the masses here. Feel free to email me, and definitely would love to chat some more about our work.
Great.
And one last comment before we close. Lori says she works for the County of Marin, which has some racial disparity issues. She's really happy to share some of these links that you've shared with her diversity teams. So really great. And we appreciate you sharing that information in this application.
Yes. Awesome. That's so exciting to know we get more people, more exposure.
Great.
So
Well,
with that,
so great. Great job, Whitney. Loved having you speak.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you both for the opportunity. We're just excited that people are sharing the platform and really just trying to elevate voices. And hopefully we'll get to do a partnership soon.
Yeah.
Maybe there's something there that we can do, and it would be awesome to collaborate.
That would.
Agreed.
For sure.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank
and
you
I see all
all.
of the thank yous coming in. So we appreciate the talk so much.
Yeah. Thank you, Whitney.
Thank you. Okay. All right.
Right.
Have a
Thanks,
good one,
everybody.
everyone.
Thank you.
You too. Bye.